Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome to our session 8 business strategy class. So we are going to talk about negotiation strategy. So this is a topic which is actually added to the concepts that the book covers. I prepared these like on top of the concepts that we covered in the book. So basically, for any business, as long as we are going to deal with people, we always need to negotiate. We need to discuss. We need to find out what is the best solution for our problems. Let's say when you are presenting an idea, presenting a business plan, presenting like a product to partners or any different type of business, you will end up negotiating. So the strategy to negotiate is also a very important concept and aspect that is required for like a business owner or managers or leaders of business. So that's why we want to cover this topic as well. So first of all, whenever we have a business strategy and there is a negotiation involved, we will be dealing with conflict. So let's discuss what's the definition of conflict. So conflict is actually a mental struggle resulting from incompatible or opposing needs, drives, wishes, or external or internal demand. So whenever there is struggles, mental struggles from opposing needs, meaning that your needs or someone's needs is against the other body's or the other people's needs, or wishes, desires, or demands, there will be conflicts. So the conflict is very, very probable, and it's happening every single second. I mean, it's so hard to have everyone having the same desire or demand. So it's very like realistic to expect conflicts to happen because people have different desires, different demands, different expectations. So we are dealing with conflicts every day. So we need to put the fish on the table to resolve the conflict. So we need to basically, whenever there are many different approaches when that conflict appears. You could just hide that conflict, pretend that it doesn't exist or didn't happen, and start or continue doing what you were doing without even considering the fact that there is a conflict. Yes, opposite ideas. So, but there's another approach that you just like put that on the table, try to resolve it. I mean, sometimes one party is right, or sometimes both of you have some right to your way of thinking. So it's better just to face it rather than just ignore that problem. So then you learn to bond when even with your enemy. So that's another concept. So like supposing that the guy who's opposing you is against you is actually a big assumption. You cannot just suppose that whoever has a different opinion is your enemy. But even if it's your enemy, you got to have some bonding in order for you to be able to negotiate. And never think like a hostage, and tap into the power of a dialogue and negotiation. So always you need to consider that you can negotiate, you can make changes happen, and you never feel like a hostage. A lot of this ideas from like our presentation today is coming from a book called Hostage Taken at the Table. So that's a book that I got a lot of ideas from this chapter. Okay. So what is the hostage? The definition of hostage is in the American Heritage Dictionary, is the one who is manipulated by the demands of another. So someone will manipulate the other one, but it's called a hostage. So we have two different types of hostage when it comes to hostage and hostage taking. So who can tell me what's the real hostage? What's the metaphorical hostage? I mean, I'm expecting you guys to just guess. Like first of all, I mean, we explain what's the hostage, like general term, someone is manipulated. But what do you think a metaphorical hostage? What is metaphor to begin with? I mean, who knows what's metaphor? Who wants to volunteer to answer the question? Metaphor, like, is a literature or like a literal term where what it means is when you say something but you mean something else. So metaphor is very, very common in literature. When you say something but you're referring to something else, indirectly referring to something else. So metaphorical hostage, what it means, istare is like in Farsi, and in English is when you say something but you mean something else. So by metaphorical hostage, we are talking about the deeper meaning of a hostage when it's used. So the deeper meaning, held hostage means when somebody holds you as a hostage. A hostage taker holds the hostage, so it's called, like, held is the past tense for hold. So held hostage means the past tense of holding someone as hostage. So metaphorical hostage, basically, we mean that you are taken as a hostage, but not necessarily physically, but like in your mind. When someone brings a conflict and you feel powerless because of that. So in order to explain that, let's talk about your brain a little bit. I mean, brain basically consists of three major parts. I mean, we have the reptilian brain, which is the most basic level. The human brain is hardwired for attacks or defense. This is fight or flight. So, which is controlled by a reptilian brain. So basically, the reptilian brain is the part of the brain all the animals have. It's like our instincts. When you are feared, you just react without thinking. It's just your reaction to fear. Comes from your instinct. When you want to defend yourself, when somebody tries to punch you, you try to move your face. So that's called part of the brain that just reacts automatically. But there's another part of the brain which is called limbic system, and Yeah, brainwashing is something else, Mr. Gaffney. Brainwashing is someone tells you something to, believe, which is mostly not the truth, but they just use different strategies and methods to make you believe in something that is not necessarily true. But the hostage is when they have you do something against your will and desire, and you feel powerless to do your own desire. So, and then limbic system is when we share it with other mammals, and it's about our emotions, our feelings, and we like someone, that kind of a feeling and desire is called limbic system. But the only part that is only for human beings and not for any other animal is the neocortex, where we process abstract thoughts, words, symbols, logic, and time. So that's the part that is different, that's unique to human beings. Okay, any questions so far? So powerlessness is poison. So let's talk about powerlessness. When do we feel powerless? So feeling powerless is one of the signs of being taken as hostage. We just talked about metaphorical hostage. We're digging deeper into metaphorical hostage. And when do we feel like a hostage? When we feel that we are powerless and you have no power over what's going to happen, then you're a metaphorical hostage. Powerlessness poisons the person's thoughts, feelings of hopelessness or entrapment. You feel entrapped. You feel that you have no choice. You feel you're trapped. You feel terrible. You just hate what's going to happen or what's happening. It's going to be one of those days. So you're just feeling powerless, as if you have no control over changing what's going to happen, over changing the scenario, over changing the current situation to a situation where you feel good about it. So you feel powerless. Yeah, when your hands are tied, it's an expression saying that you're busy. It's not necessarily when you're powerless. I mean, being busy is not. You can be busy and still be powerful. You can still be in control. You can still feel good about it. But when you're tied up, so it's not the thing. It's when you have authority is also something else. I mean, sometimes you're doing your work within your job responsibility. But the powerless feeling is when you feel that you can't do anything to change this. You have no control. You're fighting a losing battle. If you're looking for an expression, that will be it. Okay. So let me give you a case. If you're walking down the street and someone comes up to you, like behind you, and puts a gun on your head, says, "I'm going to kill you," you don't have to feel like a hostage. I mean, this is a real hostage scenario. Right? So, but you still don't have to feel like a hostage. Because while it is true that physically you're indeed a hostage, you do not have to feel like one because you still have powers to think, to breathe, to speak. You can ask a hostage taker a question. So you still have some control. Don't forget to mute your microphone, please. Okay, so you still have power. You still have power over stuff that you can do. And Mr. Nuristani, your hands are tied up is basically an expression saying that you're busy. Unless you're talking about when you're like physically your hands are tied up, you're like a hostage. Yes, but as the expression goes, it means that you're busy, and that's not what you're talking about. So like this scenario, you're physically being taken as hostage, but what I'm saying is not necessarily you should feel like a hostage because you're like a hostage because you still have power over speaking or thinking. So you basically are not a hostage, or you don't have to feel like a hostage, even though physically you are a hostage. So you can ask questions. You can ask like, will you please put the gun down and let me go, and let me help you get what you want? What if the answer is no, right? So you still can talk. So the best way to predict your future is to create it. That's what we want to talk about. What is wrong? Are you referring to the scenario, Ms. Hadia? Yes. Yeah, that's a question you can ask. What is wrong? What can I do for you? I mean, you know, there's a reason that gun is behind you, right? So for someone who is not going to feel like a hostage, the best way is to create a future the way you want. Yeah, negotiate. That's the key term. That's what we want to talk about. How to negotiate in this scenario. So the best way to predict your future is to create your future. There's a case too. So Faisal confronts his manager, Khairul, because there is a strong exchange between the two of them in a meeting during which Faisal felt embarrassed in front of his colleagues. Faisal says, I think you were really over me, or over the top, attacking me like that. Khairul responds, look, I was just telling the truth. If you don't like it, you can always leave it. You see? So basically, in this scenario, I want you guys to tell me who's the hostage, who's feeling like hostage, and you know, what's the conflict? Can you explain? Can you explain who's the hostage taker? Yeah, Kat was the hostage in the previous slide, but Faisal and Khairul, who's the hostage taker? Okay, that is true. Faisal is the hostage, and the Khairul is the hostage taker. But in a sense, it's like a two-way communication. And then in a second way that you look at it, Khairul is also being taken as hostage with his response. Hostage is when someone is like keeping you under the pressure of threatening and other tools, or uses methods or tools of bringing fear or threat, and makes you do stuff that you're not willing to do. Like a robber can go to the bank and hold the customers as hostage to, in Farsi, we call it Gerogan. Gerogan is the guy who's been held in captivity or under threat for the hostage taker to be able to do what he or she wants. So phasal and cheiral. The phasal here is hostage also because first of all he feels powerless under the attack that the manager has done in the team and is just reacting. And then cheiral is the hostage taker in that scenario. But also cheiral, the way he responds, he's also a hostage because he basically is just saying that he can leave the team. He's just, instead of like accepting the argument and try to convince the guy otherwise, he's just saying like leave the team. So he's also being held as hostage because he's not negotiating. So both of them in a sense are hostage, but in different ways. So a hostage mindset. It's good. It's good to understand what's the hostage mindset because you're talking about metaphorical hostage, and then so it's all about mind. So let's understand what's the hostage mindset. A hostage mindset makes people feel negative, feel trapped or powerless or disconnected and unable to influence and persuade. So when you feel hostage as a hostage, your mindset is like you feel trapped, you feel powerless, you feel disconnected, unable to make any changes to the situation. So negative state easily can persist, poisoning your mind, your emotions, your bodies, and your soul. Yeah, you feel trapped. You feel as if you have no control. You're just under a situation where you have no power to change anything or to make any changes. So that's when you're held as hostage. So the negative state can easily persist and poisoning your mind and emotions and bodies and souls. So that basically will go through all your body, go through all your mind, and makes you feel like you have no power over anything. You're fighting a losing battle. You have no control. So an example. This is a real case example. In April 2005, police arrested a convicted murderer called Randolph Dial, who had kidnapped Bobby Parker during his escape from an Oklahoma jail in 1994. And then he lived with her for some 11 years. Her two daughters were 8 and 10 when she was taken as hostage, and her husband was the assistant warden of that prison. Dial was quoted saying, "I had worked on her for years trying to get her mind right. I convicted her that the friend was the enemy and the enemy was the friend." So investigators believe that Dial kept Parker from escaping all those years by threatening to hurt her family. Bobby Parker was not held by handcuffs or ropes. In fact, sometimes she was able to drive alone. She was held by her own fears and her feelings, like feelings of powerlessness, to act with the goal of protecting her family. This unusual bonding can happen when there is a deep emotional shock, such as fear of being killed or fear of someone else being killed. So in this scenario, you can see that the hostage taker, Randolph Dial, has taken the wife of the watch, the warden of the prison, the guard's wife, and for 11 years. So this is a real story. This is really happened. And what happened is this guy, by threatening the wife that he will hurt the family, the kids, her, convinced her that she should not do anything. Sometimes she would drive away and go somewhere else. But because of that fear, she was not able to react. She was not able to do anything because she was taken as hostage by that guy. So you see how powerlessness poisons your mind, like stops you from thinking, from doing something that benefits you. So she was a mental hostage, that's correct. Also physical hostage. But on top of physical hostage, she was a mental hostage. Because there was times that she was out without any ropes or without like a gun on her head. So that time she was a mental hostage, and that's why she could not react. She could not do anything about it. She was just going with it. She was just she was just following what Randolph was telling her. So you see, she was taken as hostage in that sense. So courage is not a lack of fear. Courage is the ability to act while you're facing fear. So a lot of people are considered like courageous, and there's this misconception that these guys, they have no fear, which is not true. A lot of people, I mean, all people have fear. They feel it, they experience it. But the fact that they think there's no fear is not because they don't feel fearful of anything. It's just because they know how to act, even when they are fearful. So those people are courageous because they're not fearful. So bonding is the antidote. Okay, so bonding, what are we talking about? We're talking about bonding. So bonding in a hostage context is the ability to create a hostage context, is the ability to create an emotional connection in which the most difficult or dangerous person, for the purpose of finding a resolution to difference or a problem. So when there's bonding, we're talking about a context of the ability to create a hostage context, and is the ability to create an emotional connection. So you basically create an emotional connection, and then you basically, even the most dangerous person, you feel you'll be able to find a resolution. So bonding should be done despite our inner emotions driving us to attack or run away. So bonding is the key. You need to create a bonding. The heart of a healthy group lies in the intensity of the bonding between the people of organization's goals. So now we're sort of relating these concepts to organizations and companies and all that. So basically, going back to the high role example on Faisal, you see, if they had that bonding, both of them would act differently. First of all, Faisal would not present or talk to his boss or that manager or supervisor that you are all over me or something like that. He could just be nicer or like talk to him in a more casual way, saying that, like, yeah, perhaps I didn't like the way you expressed your idea. You could you could have told me this, or you could have told me like out of the group, just in person rather than in front of everyone. So, and then, you know, the boss, the high role, could also be more receptive, say, yeah, next time I will do that, and I just didn't mean to, you know, beat you up like for that mistake. I just don't want that to happen. So yeah, there could be, like, if there's bonding, they would be able to understand each other. Like when Faisal would approach, would say, I understand that perhaps that frustrated you, my mistake or whatever, but, you know, I would rather if you have told it, like, not in front of everyone, you know, and then he could have bonded and say, yeah, the reason I'm telling you is just for your own sake, and I want you to be successful. You know, there's different ways. I mean, when you create bonding, when You are able to talk to people and tap their emotions, are able to create that link, emotional link, then you're able to achieve the goals. So this is about organizations. What you're talking about every single day as you go to work, you're dealing with other people. You could be held as hostage, or you could hold them as hostage. So, and metaphorical hostage. And as someone who is, you make them feel powerless, or yourself might feel powerless. So it's the story of every day. You gotta feel in control. You gotta feel that bonding can be measured by degree of engagement in emotional involvement. You gotta be involved and keep others involved. If you're a manager, if you're a leader, you gotta keep people involved and give them that sense or feeling that they are involved. They are part of the team. They are attached to this team, and they are important to this team. And for you and your team to be successful, you need their help, and they need you. And that's kind of a bonding that we're looking for. That's kind of a bonding that keeps the group together, keeps the ball rolling, and makes you feel powerful and them powerful, and makes you guys be able to be successful. Okay. So another example. In February 1993, more than 70 agents from Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms raided the branch Deviants, a religious cult led by David Koresh, success of having high-powered weapons as well as explosives, according to reports. When the team arrived to enforce warrants for the arrest of these cult, Waco, shooting started almost immediately, and leaving 4 of the ATF agents and 6 branch deviants dead. So FBI moved in, and a lengthy standoffs ensued. And after 50 days, FBI tried to raid in by armed vehicles, and by the end of the day, more than 70 men, women, children were dead. So you can see. So you can see in this example that because the lack of negotiation, even though the police was trying to do the right thing, which is stopping those criminals from, hurting people, but because they were not able to understand and be able to, stop them with negotiation, like this tragedy happened. An example in Malaysia, September 2007, a boy of Lok Chi Meng had lost 3 of his fingers in the hostage drama done to him by his own uncle. When the Special Strike Force of the police stormed to the room, the deranged man, Jimmy, 49, was holding the boy as hostage and was shot dead on the head in abdomen. And then he had already served the boy's 3 fingers. So you see, it's happening everywhere. I mean, there are criminals and there are people. I mean, these are tragedies or examples from real hostage scenarios. But what I mean to bring them in as examples is just to show you when people are wrong, when people lose their sense of wisdom and reasoning and argument, they can do crazy stuff. So for you as a negotiator, you should be able to bring them to the table and negotiate. Example of a successful case. A 9-year-old girl was with her grandmother in Kansas, and while her mother was away, and suddenly she awoke in the middle of the night to see her grandma sitting up in her bed while a man is standing over her head. The little girl felt like screaming, and then the grandma touched her and she felt a flood of calm wash over her. So the grandma said, "I'm glad you found our house. You've come to the right place. You're welcome here. It is a bad night to be out.
you're cold, wet, and hungry, and let me take the firewood, and you have there, and then go sear up in the kitchen stove. Let me put some cloth on, and I will find you some dry cloth. Fix you a good hot meal, and make you a place for you to sleep behind, where it is where it's good and warm. And then she said no. She said no more and waited calmly. So in this scenario, there was a guy who broke into their home, and instead of the grandma being fearful and losing her temper, she actually provided food and shelter and tried to create bonding. So it's important. It's interesting to know that this guy left next day, and they were unharmed, and that same guy had killed all the other neighbors. So let me see what I have here as examples. I have Miss Hadi, I don't understand your question. You say negotiation will happen in a company during your work, and should understand these. Can you elaborate? What do you mean? I don't understand your question. So, Mr. Faisal, we can't appear one day as much as we try showing you. 3 years ago, an expat was held hostage with Taliban. They wanted to negotiate with them. Yeah, negotiation is very important. That's true, Mr. Kakar. So, yeah, these are real case examples. Yeah, bonding, Mr. Samet, is when you create a connection. Like, you try to understand the feeling of the hostage taker. You try to tap on the guy's feeling. So, instead of, when somebody takes you as hostage, let's say that's Khairul and Faisal, right? When somebody is not nice to you, when somebody comes to you and say, you can leave the team if you don't like it, that's it. Instead of you just responding with your own thinking, bonding is when you try to understand why he's acting like that. Bonding is trying to understand him and create a connection with him first, and then make what you want done, rather than just telling what you want. So basically, you are creating a connection between yourself and the other guy. Could be your manager, could be your subordinates, could be your coworkers. So instead of just arguing, just without any bonding, bonding is when you create a connection, a feeling towards each other. Try to feel the other guy, and the other guy tries to feel you, and you try to understand each other. Why is it that he's doing like that? Why is it he's talking like that? So that way, and then you make him understand that you feel or understand what he wants. You make him feel that you care for him. You make him feel that you care for him to get what he wants. So the moment you have that connection, then it's much easier for you to negotiate, rather than just to start demanding and asking what you want. That way, you won't get it. But you will get it when you make the guy feel, okay, you care. Okay, you want to give that person what they want. Okay? So freedom through our mind's eye. That's what I was trying to say. So all high performers have a secret. They use their mind's eye to focus on the benefit and not the pain. So basically, you focus on the benefit and not the pain. So the mind's eye directs whether we focus on the pain and the frustration, the negative, or on the benefit, which is the positive. So you have the negative and the positive. So you need to learn how to focus on the positive. The mind's eye is both a system of selective attention and a system of interpretation, and is one of the most powerful mechanisms in our brain. The mind's eye is one of the most mechanisms in your brain which has a selective, way of selective attention. Because when you give attention to negative thoughts or positive thoughts, that's what your mind's eye is doing. So, look at here. The mind's eye determines the results. Okay? So, you have the state, you have the results. So, you have past experiences, you have future, and your mind's eye is in the middle, sorry. So, based on your state and results, you try to keep your focus. You could keep it on your positive side or negative side. Your positive side is a winning cycle, and negative side is a losing cycle. So if you try to keep your mind's eye, keep your selective attention on your positive side, you are in a winning cycle, and then the winning cycle will basically result in your better state. Better state means better situation that you have. Like currently you will be happy, and then the results will be good, and your future and your past also will reflect that. So that's how mind's eye will work. So focusing with the mind's eye. Have you ever told yourself you were going to fail before you started presenting a key issue to the boss? What we believe will happen generally does happen. The mind's eye makes it possible to achieve anything we want. So when you tell yourself you're going to fail, you're going to fail. When you tell yourself you're going to succeed, you're going to succeed. That's just the way you think, and that's going to happen because your mind is so powerful, and your mind's eye will have a focus on the positive or negative according to yourself, and then it will lead into your success or failure. So the important element is to focus on the positive outcome. Focusing on negative outcome will ensure that there will be you will become a hostage. Okay? So there's a case tree here. So Hafiz, believed a lot, has hijacked a business meeting that Hafiz was leading by questioning Hafiz's methodology. Allah had made a disparaging comment after Hafiz's introduction, and from then on, Allah steered the other committee members away from the real focus of what Hafiz was there to present and onto the side issue of the actual approach she had used. Allah's unexpected interruptions had unnerved Hafiz's and spoiled what was critical presentations for the project. Hafiz and his team had spent the past 6 months working on it. So yeah, this is a good example. Like you're presenting an idea or a result of a project that you guys, like a team of 6 or how many worked on, and then suddenly by a question, just by a simple question, you might feel like a hostage. You feel like you're taken as hostage and you're not able to perform, you're not able to present when you were there to present, and you feel steered away from the topic you were trying to present, right? So it's important to focus on the positive side. That question could be just left for the later part. You could have said, like the Hafiz could have said, I will respond to that question later on, or I will leave it for the end, or somebody else, or how do you respond to that question? Or, that could be just kept as a minor question, rather than keeping the whole focus of the presentation on responding to that question. So it was the presenter herself or himself that focused so much on the negative side that caused in his failure, rather than focusing on the positive side. So understanding the mind's eye of another person is important. Hostage negotiators should understand quickly what is in the mind's eye of a hostage taker. This is a secret to understanding the motivation why someone engages in constructive or destructive behavior. Without understanding someone else's motivation, we will not be effective in establishing a strong enough bond to influence the other people. So you should understand what's the mind's eye of the hostage taker. Understanding the mind's eye is important because you, first of all, understand what's in the mind of the guy who is taking you as a hostage. That's part of the bonding. And when you find out the motivation behind what they do, then it's easier to create bonding. So then you refocus their mind's eye from the negative side to the positive side. So you change an angry guy to the happy guy. So that guy, like that grandma example, she was able to change the idea and the focus of the hostage taker from the losing cycle to a winning cycle. And that's why somebody's talking. Can you please mute your microphone, please? Whose microphone is on? I mean, it's I see some whispering. Please mute your microphone, Mr. Faisal. Okay. So basically, what we were talking about was the mind's eye. So the gist of the class is for you to understand the motivation, for you to understand why your manager, your boss, your subordinates is acting the way they are. It's first of all for you to understand their motivation, to understand their mind's eye, understand what's their mind's eye's attention. When it's on the losing cycle, you should create bonding and then change their mind's eye from a losing cycle focus to a winning cycle focus. So bring their focus from a negative side to the positive side, and then you'll be successful. So the power of a state of mind, a coherent set of feelings, thinking, and behavior. So that's a state of mind. A state includes your physiology, attitude, emotions, mood, behavior, beliefs, all together in one stance. Do you know when you are in a positive state, an angry state, or an anxious state, or discouraged? Do you feel that? Do you understand? So the heart of being successful results in the state that we create. So the state that we create so when you're enthused, you're happy, you're excited. When you're angry, when you're feeling enthusiasm all over you. So that shows in your state. So the heart of being successful rest in the state we create. So be honest with yourself. Know that if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling powerless, that's the state that you're creating for yourself. No matter what is the causes. I mean, there could be a lot of conflicts that you face, a lot of troubles, but then the state is in your control. So what is in your control is not supposed to be done or is not supposed to be performed the way it results in your failure. So in turn, the focus of your mind's eye determines your state. So when your mind's eye is on your positive rather than negative, that's how you will be successful. That's how you will make something happen. Okay? So the key to success in that presentation that Hoffer was presenting, in that comment that Faisal was telling Carol, was if they had, first of all, controlled their state, try to stay in the positive state, and then try to understand the mind's eye of the other guy and understand their mind's eye cycle, whether it's a winning cycle or a losing cycle, and then try to change that focus. Key to success is to always be positive no matter what. Yes, being positive no matter what will cause in your positive state, and your mind's eye will be successful. So looky here, you see, you have the separation, then you have preparation, there is grief, you identify what's the reason that someone is feeling grief or pain or the motivation. You create an attachment to that guy, and because of that comfort that is created, you create a bonding. So bonding is when you want to end up from separation. You see? So interest is like people's different ideas, different like mind's eye selective attention makes them separated from you. But then you need to prepare them to understand what's the reason they are feeling pain and grief. Why are they doing what they're doing? And when you identify the reason, you can create an attachment. And that attachment will lead in comfort of having a bond. So from separation, you should end up in bonding. So that's how you can be able to succeed. So for a manager to be able to manage his employees, the manager needs to create bonding. Needs to understand their troubles, their issues, their problems, and then change that to a bonding. So when all the team is on bonding term, then it's much easier to be successful. Okay? So key points to remember then. A hostage mindset involves feeling trapped, helpless, powerless, disconnected, and unable to influence and persuade. The brain is hardwired to survive while looking for danger and pain. So we can override this instinctual aspect of the brain to look for the positive and for ways to act with personal power. So learn how helplessness and lack of control of our mindset causes people to be powerless. Recovering our power to choose a reaction to the events in our lives is possible for anyone who has become a hostage. So you never should have learned helplessness. You should not. The direction of the cycle is from separation, going to grief, going to attachment, and ending in bonding. So we want to take everyone, you're welcome, we want to take everyone from separation to bonding. And that's how from bonding you might get to separation, because people when they're bond, they have a good bonding, they might still have different interests. But then you get them back to bonding. But so it's an ongoing cycle. Because the same guy that you create bonding have a lot of different demands and desires. But you gotta find out how to bring them all back to the bonding and try to solve the issue. So it does not mean that everyone should think exactly the same way, but it definitely means that instead of having arguments and problems because of different ideas, different desires, you could resolve those by using this strategy. So we should never follow helplessness. We should never let our mindset focus on the powerless side or the losing cycle. And then you should know, like there's a typo here, you should know, which is K-N-O-W, what do you want in order to maintain a mindset of everything is possible. If you do not get what you want, find a positive in getting what you want. Either way, you win and you will feel like awesome. So don't ever feel hostage, metaphorical or like non-metaphorical. So I'm going to show you a couple movies. One is a video clip that I filmed myself. I actually filmed this movie myself, and it's about a snake and trapping the food. And then I'm going to show you a movie, or maybe because of the lack of time, I just show you the other movie, which is a better one. Let me just show you this movie. Please make sure you mute your microphones. And before we go to the movie, I just want to tell everyone, next session, if you remember in session 1, we talked about your personal or individual presentations. So what I expect everyone now, because you guys have 2 separate projects. One is your final project that we will discuss it next session. Next session, I will tell you exactly what is your final project. You will have a few weeks after the end of last session, which is 2 weeks from now. 2 weeks from now, our course is going to end, and then you have 2 weeks from then to finish your project and get back to me. But next week, I expect all the students to have a volunteer presentation. So volunteer presentation is, I expect you guys to choose a topic on one of the concepts we covered in the class and make a small presentation up to 5 minutes. So 5-minute presentations. I will give you the presenter's role. Please mute your microphones one more time. I mean, we are towards the end of the class and we are still having problems with muting the microphones. So please mute your microphones. As I said, I expect you to have a presentation. So you can choose a topic, an example, a case, a small, short case, or present a good idea on business strategy or something you have done which was successful and present it to the class. Okay? Today, when I send you the slides, I'm going to send you that as well. So my email will tell you and those of you who do not present or do not volunteer, you'll just lose that point for your score. So I would definitely suggest that you will, try to make that happen, because then you'll lose the score for it. Okay, any questions so far? Oh, it could be one slide, it could be no slides, it could be anything. It's up to you. It's your presentation. It's very important. It could be any subject that it's related to business strategy. It could be the project that you have in your work that you use some of the concepts in business strategy. Yeah, a good example. Let's say I work in multimedia company. Let's say I work in a telephone company, right? Let's say I'm a student, I work in a telephone company, and I use, let's say, just today's topic, negotiation strategy in presenting my project. I wanted to present a campaign, a marketing campaign to our store manager, and I use negotiation strategy in order, first of all, understanding what my managers want as he was denying my project, and then try to change his focus from the negative cycle, which was him rejecting my project, to the positive side, giving him the insight on how beneficial my campaign was, and he finally granted me the project budget. So then I got the approval. This is just a general example. I need more details, But 5 minutes. I need 5 minutes of your presentation. You can talk about international strategies, international business that you talk. You can talk about value chain and how it helped you do your business better. You can talk about outsourcing, how you want to use and implement outsourcing in your company. You can absolutely do that. Make it as personal as possible. Don't just show me the slides that I gave you. You try to make changes. You try to make it your own slides. I want you to be yours, not necessarily just a repetition of what we learned in the class. Okay? And I will also mention that in the email I'm going to send you. Yes, after you present or before you present is better. If you can send me before the class, before next session starts, like one day, at least a day before you start the class. And it could be one slide, it could be 2 slides, it could be as many slides, but you only will have 5 minutes. Okay? So 5 minutes max. So how many slides you want to discuss? It could be all to present. That's correct. Those who cannot finish next session, we will go to the next session after. So try to have 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes for question and answer, and that's it. So manage your time and be to the point. So you cannot talk about all the courses or topics that you taught. You should just pick one topic and be specific about it. Okay? So now let me show you the video clip about hostage scenario. This hostage scenario I'm going to show you is one of the most visited lectures. Let me give you an explanation of what this lecture is about. You are going to watch a Randy Post's last lecture. We're going to watch parts of it. You can watch it later, next session, the rest. It's a long video. It's 1 hour or something. And then it's very important. It's basically this guy, this lecturer, he was a lecturer in Carnegie Mellon University. He realized he has cancer and he's about to die. So what he did, he presented a lecture on how he's facing the conflict of that cancer. So instead of him feeling like a captive, like a hostage, he did not take that powerlessness or learned powerlessness, and he opposed that, and he focused on the winning cycle. He passed away 4 months after. He's already passed away, but his approach made his life as an example for everyone. So basically that's beautiful. He died about 5-6 years ago, and it's awesome. So let's watch his video. Okay. So let's go ahead and watch it. And I'll pause it like probably in the middle because we don't have enough time to watch it all, but we'll watch some parts of it. And then next session you will have your presentations. We can watch the rest of it. But for now, let's just watch those parts that we can see. So let's go here.
Make me earn it. It's wonderful to be here. What Indira didn't tell you is that this lecture series used to be called The Last Lecture. If you had one last lecture to give before you died, what would it be? I thought, damn, I finally nailed the venue and they renamed it. So, you know, in case there's anybody who wandered in and doesn't know the backstory, my dad always taught me when there's an elephant in the room, introduce them. If you look at my CAT scans, there are approximately 10 tumors in my liver, and the doctors told me 3 to 6 months of good health left. That was a month ago, so you can do the math. I have some of the best doctors in the world. So that is what it is. We can't change it, and we just have to decide how we're going to respond to that. We cannot change the cards we are dealt, just how we play the hand. If I don't seem as depressed or morose as I should be, sorry to disappoint you. And I assure you, I am not in denial. It's not like I'm not aware of what's going on. My family, my 3 kids, my wife, we just decamped. We bought a lovely house in Chesapeake, Virginia, near Norfolk, and we're doing that because that's a better place for the family to be down the road. And the other thing is I am in phenomenally good health right now. I mean, it's the greatest thing of cognitive dissonance you will ever see is the fact that I am in really good shape. In fact, I'm in better shape than most of you. So anybody who wants to cry or pity me can come down and do a few of those, and then you may pity me. All right, so what we're not talking about today, we're not talking about cancer, because I spent a lot of time talking about that. I'm really not interested. If you have any herbal supplements or remedies, please stay away from me. And we're not going to talk about things that are even more important than achieving your childhood dreams. We're not going to talk about my wife, we're not going to talk about my kids, because I'm good, but I'm not good enough to talk about that without tearing. So we're just going to take that off the table. That's much more important. And we're not going to talk about spirituality and religion, although I will tell you that I have experienced the deathbed conversion. I just bought a Macintosh. Now, I knew I'd get 9% of the audience with that. But all right, so what is today's talk about this? It's about my childhood dreams and how I've achieved them. I've been very fortunate that way. How I believe I've been able to enable the dreams, the dreams of others. And to some degree, lessons learned. I'm a professor. There should be some lessons learned. And how you can use the stuff you hear today to achieve your dreams or enable the dreams of others. And as you get older, you may find that enabling the dreams of others thing is even more fun. So what were my childhood dreams? Well, you know, I had a really good childhood. I mean, no kidding around. I was going back through the family archives, and what was really amazing was I couldn't find any pictures of me as a kid where I wasn't smiling, right? And that was just a very gratifying thing. You know, there was our dog, right? Oh, thank you. And there I actually have a picture of me dreaming. And I did a lot of that, you know, there's a lot of wake up, you know. It was an easy time to dream. I was born in 1960, right? When you're 8 or 9 years old and you look at the TV set and men are landing on the moon, anything is possible. And that's something we should not lose sight of, is that the inspiration and the permission to dream is huge. So what were my childhood dreams? You may not agree with this list, but I was there. Being in zero gravity, playing in the National Football League, authoring an article in the World Book Encyclopedia. I guess you can tell the nerds early. Being Captain Kirk. Anybody here have that childhood dream? Not at CMU, no. I wanted to become one of the guys who won the big stuffed animals in the amusement park, and I wanted to be an Imagineer with Disney. Right? These are not sorted in any particular order, although I think they do get harder, except for maybe the first one. Okay, so being in zero gravity. Now, it's important to have specific dreams. I did not dream of being an astronaut, because when I was a little kid, I wore glasses, and they told me, oh, astronauts can't have glasses. And I was like, I didn't really want the whole astronaut gig. I just wanted the floating. So, and as a child, prototype 0.0. But that didn't work so well. And it turns out that NASA has something called the Vomit Comet that they use to train the astronauts. And this thing does parabolic arcs. And at the top of each arc, you get about 25 seconds where you're ballistic, and you get about a rough equivalent of weightlessness for about 25 seconds. And there is a program where college students can submit proposals. And if they win the competition, they get to fly. And I thought that was really cool, and we had a team, we put a team together, and they won, and they got to fly. And I was all excited because I was going to go with them. And then I hit the first brick wall, because they made it very clear that under no circumstances were faculty members allowed to fly with the teams. I know, I was heartbroken, right. I was like, I worked so hard. And so I read the literature very carefully, and it turns out that NASA is part of their outreach and publicity program. And it turns out that these students were allowed to bring a local media journalist from their hometown. And Randy Pausch, web journalist. It's really easy to get a press pass. So I called up the guys at NASA, and I said, I need to know where to fax some documents. And they said, what documents are you going to fax us? I said, my resignation as the faculty advisor and my application as the journalist. And he said, that's a little transparent, don't you think? And I said, yeah, but our project is virtual reality, and we're going to bring down a whole bunch of VR headsets, and all the students from all the teams are going to experience it, and all those other real journalists are going to get to film it. Jim Bully's going, ah, you bastard, yes. And the guy said, here's the fax number. So, and indeed, we kept our end of the bargain. And that's one of the themes that you'll hear later on in the talk, is have something to bring to the table, right? Because that will make you more welcomed. And if you're curious about what zero gravity looks like, hopefully the sound will be working here.
This is fantastic. It's just amazing. It's nothing like we're having a break.
Here I am.
I don't think any of us. This is awesome. Not one, Monty. That's it.
You do pay the piper at the bottom. So, childhood dream number one, check. All right, let's talk about football. My dream was to play in the National Football League. And most of you don't know that I actually, no. No, I did not make it to the National Football League. But I probably got more from that dream and not accomplishing it than I got from any of the ones that I did accomplish. I had a coach. I signed up when I was 9 years old. I was the smallest kid in the league by far. And I had a coach, Jim Graham, who was 6'4". He had played linebacker at Penn State. He was just this hulk of a guy, and he was old school. Okay, I mean, really old school. Like, he thought the forward pass was a trick play. And he showed up for practice the first day, and you know, this big hulking guy. We were all scared to death of him, and he hadn't brought any footballs. How are we going to have practice without any football? And one of the other kids said, excuse me, coach, but there's no football. And Coach Graham said, right, how many men are on a football field at a time? 11 on a team, 22. And Coach Graham said, All right, and how many people are touching the football at any given time? One of them. He said, right, so we're going to work on what those other 21 guys are doing. And that's a really good story because it's all about fundamentals. Fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals. You've got to get the fundamentals down because otherwise the fancy stuff isn't going to work. And the other Jim Graham story I have is there was one practice where he just rode me all practice. Just, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, go back and do it again, you owe me, you're doing push-ups after practice. And when it was all over, one of the other assistant coaches came over and said, yeah, Coach Graham rode you pretty hard, didn't he? I said, yeah. He said, that's a good thing. He said, when you're screwing up and nobody's saying anything to you anymore, that means they gave up. And that's a lesson that stuck with me my whole life, is that when you see yourself doing something badly and nobody's bothering to tell you anymore, that's a very bad place to be. Your critics are your ones telling you they still love you and care. After Coach Graham, I had another coach, Coach Setliff, and he taught me a lot about the power of enthusiasm. He did this one thing where only for one play at a time, he would put people in at like the most horrifically wrong position for them. Like all the short guys would become receivers, right? And it was just laughable. But we only went in for one play, right? And boy, the other team just never knew what hit them. Because when you're only going for one play and you're just not where you're supposed to be, and freedom's just another word for nothing less to lose, boy, are you going to clean somebody's clock for that one play. And that kind of enthusiasm was great. And to this day, I am most comfortable on a football field. I mean, it's just one of those things where, you know, if I'm working a hard problem, people will see me wandering the halls with one of these things. And that's just because, you know, when you do something young enough and you train for it, it just becomes a part of you. And I'm very glad that football was a part of my life. And if I didn't get the dream of playing in the NFL, that's okay. I probably got stuff more valuable. Because looking at what's going on in the NFL, I'm not sure those guys are doing so great right now. Okay? And so one of the expressions I learned in electronic arts, which I love, which pertains to this, is experience is what you get when you didn't get what you want. And I think that's absolutely lovely. And the other thing about football is we send our kids out to play football or soccer or swimming, whatever it is. And it's the first example of what I'm going to call a head fake or indirect learning. We actually don't want our kids to learn football. I mean, yeah, it's really nice that I have a wonderful three-point stance and that I know how to do a chop block and all this kind of stuff. But we send our kids out to learn much more important things: teamwork, sportsmanship, perseverance, et cetera, et cetera. And these kinds of head fake learnings are absolutely important. And you should keep your eye out for them because they're everywhere. All right, a simple one, being an author in the World Book Encyclopedia. When I was a kid, we had the World Book Encyclopedia on the shelf. For the freshmen, this is paper. We used to have these things called books. And after I had become somewhat of an authority on virtual reality, but not like a really important one, so I was at the level of people the World Book would badger. They called me up, and I wrote an article, and this is Caitlin Kelleher. And there's an article, if you go to your local library, where they still have copies of the World Book. Look under V for virtual reality, and there it is. And all I have to say is that having been selected to be an author in the World Book Encyclopedia, I now believe that Wikipedia is a perfectly fine source for your information because I know what the quality control is for real encyclopedias. They let me in. All right, next one. At a certain point, you just realize there's some things you're not going to do, so maybe you just want to stand close to the people. And I mean, my God, what a role model for young people. I mean, this is everything you want to be. And what I learned that carried me forward in leadership later is that, you know, he wasn't the smartest guy on the ship. I mean, Spock was pretty smart, and McCoy was the doctor, and Scotty was the engineer, and you sort of go, and what skill set did he have to get on this damn thing and run it? And, you know, clearly there's this skill set called leadership. And, you know, whether or not you like the series, there's no doubt that there was a lot to be learned about how to lead people by watching this guy in action. So, and he just had the coolest damn toys. Right? I mean, my God. You know, I just thought it was fascinating as a kid that he had this thing, and he could, you know, talk to the ship with it. Right? You know, I just thought that was just spectacular. And of course, now I own one, and it's smaller. So that's kind of cool. So I got to achieve this dream. James T. Kirk, his alter ego, William Shatner, wrote a book, which I think was actually a pretty cool book. It was with Chip Walter, who is a Pittsburgh-based author. It's quite good. And they wrote a book on basically the science of Star Trek, what has come true. And they went around to the top places around the country and looked at various things, and they came here to study our virtual reality center. And so we built a virtual reality for him. It looks something like that. We put it in, put it to red alert. He was a very good sport. It's not like he saw that one coming. And it's really cool to meet your boyhood idol. But it's even cooler when he comes to you to see what cool stuff you're doing in your lab. That was just a great moment. All right, winning with stuffed animals. This may seem mundane to you, but when you're a little kid, you see the big buff guys walking around in the amusement park, and they got all these big stuffed animals, right? And this is my lovely wife, and I have a lot of pictures of stuffed animals I've won. That's my dad posing with one that I won. I've won a lot of these animals. There's my dad. He did win that one, to his credit. Right? And this was just a big part of my life and my family's life. But, I can hear the cynics. In this age of digitally manipulated things, maybe those bears really aren't in the picture with me, or maybe I paid somebody $5 to take a picture in the theme park next to the bear. And I said, how in this age of cynicism can I convince people? And I said, I know, I can show them the bears. We just put them back against the wall. Okay. Thanks, honey. So here's some bears. We didn't have quite enough room in the moving truck down to Chesapeake, and anybody who'd like a little piece of me at the end of this, feel free to come up. First come, first serve. All right, my next one, being an Imagineer. This was the hard one. Believe me, getting to zero gravity is easier than becoming an Imagineer. When I was a kid, I was 8 years old, and our family took a trip cross-country to see Disneyland. And if you've ever seen the movie National Lampoon's Vacation, it was a lot like that. It was a quest. And these are real vintage photographs. And there I am in front of the castle, and there I am. And for those of you who are into foreshadowing, this is the Alice ride. And I just thought this was just the coolest environment I've ever been in. And instead of saying, gee, I want to experience this, I said, I want to make stuff like this. And so I bided my time, and then I graduated with my PhD from Carnegie Mellon, thinking that meant me infinitely qualified to do anything. And I dashed off my letters of application to Walt Disney Imagineering, and they sent me some of the damn nicest go-to-hell letters I've ever gotten. I mean, it was just, we had carefully reviewed your application, and presently we do not have any positions available which require your particular qualification. Now think about the fact that you're getting this from a place that's famous for guys who sweep the street. Right? So that was a bit of a setback. But remember, the brick walls are there for a reason. All right? The brick walls are not there to keep us out. The brick walls are there to give us a chance to show how badly we want something. Because the brick walls are there to stop the people who don't want it badly enough. They're there to stop the other people. All right, fast forward to 1991. We did a system back at the University of Virginia called Virtual Reality on $5 a day. Just one of those unbelievable, spectacular things. I was so scared back in those days as a junior academic. Jim Foley's here, and I just love to tell the story. He knew my undergraduate advisor, Andy Van Dam, and I'm at my first conference, and I'm just scared to death. And this icon in the user interface community walks up to me and just out of nowhere just gives me this huge bear hug, and he says, that was from Andy. And that was when I thought, okay, maybe I can make it, all right? Maybe I do belong. And a similar story is that this was just this unbelievable hit because at the time everybody needed $500,000 to do virtual reality and everybody felt frustrated. And we literally hacked together a system for about $5,000 in parts and made a working VR system. And people were just like, oh my God, it's like, you know, the Hewlett-Packard Garage thing. This is so awesome. And so I'm giving this talk and the room has just gone wild. And during the Q&A, a guy named Tom Furness, who was one of the big names in virtual reality at the time, he goes to the microphone and he introduces himself. I didn't know what he looked like, but I sure as hell knew the name. And he asked a question. And I was like, I'm sorry, did you say you're Tom Furness? He said, yes. I said, I would love to answer your question, but first, will you have lunch with me tomorrow? And there's a lot in that little moment, right? There's a lot of humility, but also asking a person where he can't possibly say no. And so Imagineering, a couple of years later, was working on a virtual reality project. This was top secret. They were denying the existence of a virtual reality attraction after the time that the publicity department was running the TV commercials. Okay, so Imagineering really had nailed this one tight. And it was the Aladdin attraction where you would fly a magic carpet. And the head-mounted display, sometimes known as Gator Vision. And so I had an in. As soon as the project had just, you know, they started running the TV commercials. And I had been asked to brief the Secretary of Defense on the state of virtual reality. Okay, Fred Brooks and I had been asked to brief the Secretary of Defense. And that gave me an excuse. So I called them up, I called Imagineering, and I said, look, I'm briefing the Secretary of Defense. I'd like some materials on what you have because it's one of the best VR systems in the world. And they kind of pushed back and I said, look, is all this patriotism stuff in the parks a farce? And they're like, okay. They said, but the PR department doesn't have, this is so new, the PR department doesn't have any footage for it, so I'm going to have to connect you straight through to the team who did the work. Jackpot. So I find myself on the phone with a guy named John Snoddy, who is one of the most impressive guys I have ever met. And he was the guy running this team, and it's not surprising they had done impressive things. And so he sent me some stuff, we talked briefly, he sent me some stuff, and I said, hey, I'm going to be out in the area for a conference shortly. We'd like to get together and have lunch. Translation, I'm going to lie to you and say that I have an excuse to be in the area so I don't look too anxious. But I would go to Neptune to have lunch with you. And so John said, sure. And I spent something like 80 hours talking with all the VR experts in the world, saying, if you had access to this one unbelievable project, what would you ask? And then I compiled all of that, and I had to memorize it, which anybody knows me knows that I have no memory at all, because I couldn't go in looking like a dweeb with, you know, hi, question 72, right? So I went in, and this was like a 2-hour lunch, and John must have thought he was talking to, you know, some phenomenal person, because all I was doing was channeling Fred Brooks and Ivan Sutherland and Andy Van Damme and people like that, and Henry Fuchs. So it's pretty easy to be smart when you're parroting smart people. And at the end of the lunch with John, I sort of, as we say in the business, made the ask. And I said, you know, I have a sabbatical coming up. And he said, what's that? The beginnings of the culture clash. And so I talked to him about the possibility of coming there and working with him. And he said, well, that's really good, except, you know, you're in the business of telling people stuff, and we're in the business of keeping secrets. Right? And then what made John Snoddy was he said, but we'll work it out. Right? Which I really love. The other thing that I learned from John Snoddy, I could do easily an hour-long talk just on what have I learned from John Snoddy. One of the things he told me was that wait long enough and people will surprise and impress you. He said, when you're pissed off at somebody and you're angry at them, you just haven't given them enough time. Just give them a little more time and they'll almost always impress you. And that really stuck with me. I think he's absolutely right on that. To make a long story short, we negotiated a legal contract. It was going to be the first, some people refer to it as the first and last paper ever published by Imagineering. But the deal was I go, I provide my own funding, I go for 6 months, I work for the project, we publish a paper. And then we meet our villain. I can't be all sweetness and light because I have no credibility. Somebody's head's going to go on a stick. Turns out that the person who gets his head on the stick is a dean back at the University of Virginia. His name is not important. Let's call him Dean Wormer. And Dean Wormer has a meeting with me where I say I want to do this sabbatical thing, and I've actually gotten the Imagineering guys to let an academic in, which is insane. I mean, if John hadn't gone nuts, this would never have been possible. It was a very secretive organization. And Dean Wormer looks at the paperwork and he says, well, it says they're going to own your intellectual property. And I said, yeah, we got the agreement to publish the paper. There is no other IP. I don't do patentable stuff. He says, yeah, but you might. So he deals off and just get him to change that little clause there. And then come back to me. I'm like, excuse me? And then I said to him, I want you to understand how important this is. If we can't work this out, I'm going to take an unpaid leave of absence, and I'm just going to go there, and I'm going to do this thing. And he said, hey, you know, I'm not even let you do that. I mean, you got the IP in your head already, and maybe they're going to suck it out of you, so that's not going to fly either. It's very important to know when you're in a pissing match. And it's very important to get out of it as quickly as possible. So I said to him, well, let's back off on this. Do you think this is a good idea at all? He said, I have no idea if this is a good idea. I was like, okay, well, we've got common ground there. And I said, well, is this really your call? Isn't this the call of the Dean of Sponsored Research? Is it an IP issue? And he said, yeah, that's true. I said, so if he's happy, you're happy? Yeah, then I'd be fine. Like Wile E. Coyote rolling. And I find myself in Gene Block's office, who's the most fantastic man in the world. And I start talking to Gene Block, and I say, let's start at the high level, since I don't want to have to back out again. Let's start at the high level. Do you think this is a good idea? He said, well, if you're asking me if it's a good idea, I don't have very much information. All I know is that one of my star faculty members is in my office, and he's really excited, so tell me more. Here's a lesson for everybody in administration. They both said the same thing. But think about how they said it, right? I don't know. Well, I don't have much information, but one of my star faculty members is here, and he's all excited, so I want to learn more. They're both ways of saying I don't know, but boy, there's a good way and a bad way. So anyway, we got it all worked out. I went to Imagineering, sweetness and light, and all's well that ends well. Some brick walls are made of flesh. So I worked on the Aladdin project. It was absolutely spectacular. I mean, just unbelievable. Here's my nephew Christopher. This was the apparatus. You would sit on this sort of motorcycle type thing, and you would steer your magic carpet, and you would put on the head-mounted display. The head-mounted display was very interesting. It had two parts, and it was a very, very clever design. To get throughput through, the only part that touched the guest's head was this little cap, and everything else clicked onto it, all the expensive hardware. So you could replicate the caps because they were basically free to manufacture. And this is what I really did. I was a cap cleaner during this. I loved Imagineering. It was just a spectacular place. Just spectacular. Everything that I had dreamed. I love the model shop. People crawling around on things the size of this room that are just big physical models. It was just an incredible place to walk around and be inspired. I'm always reminded when I went there and people said, do you think the expectations are too high? I said, you ever see the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Where Gene Wilder says to the little boy Charlie, he's about to give him the chocolate factory. He says, well, Charlie, did anybody ever tell you the story of the little boy who suddenly got everything he ever wanted? Charlie's eyes get like saucers and he says, no, what happened to him? Gene Wilder says, he lived happily ever after. Okay, so working on the Aladdin VR, I described it as a once in every 5 years opportunity, and I stand by that assessment. It forever changed me. It wasn't just that it was good work and I got to be a part of it, but it got me into the place of working with real people and real HCI, user interface issues. Most HCI people live in this fantasy world of white-collar laborers with PhDs and master's degrees, and until you got ice cream spilled on you, you're not doing field work, right? And more than anything else from John Snoddy, I learned how to put artists and engineers together, and that's been the real legacy. We published a paper, just a nice academic cultural scandal. When we wrote the paper, the guys at Imagineering said, well, let's do a nice big picture, like you would in a magazine. And the SIGGRAPH committee, which accepted the paper, it was like this big scandal. Are they allowed to do that? There was no rule. So we published the paper, and amazingly since then, there's a tradition of SIGGRAPH papers having color figures on the first page. I've changed the world in a small way. And then at the end of my 6 months, they came to me and they said, you want to do it for real? You can stay. And I said no. One of the only times in my life I have surprised my father. He was like, "You what?" He said, "Since you were, all you wanted, and now they got it, and you're like, huh?" There was a bottle of Maalox in my desk drawer. Be careful what you wish for. It was a particularly stressful place. Imagineering in general is actually not so Maalox laden, but the lab I was in, John left in the middle. It was a lot like the Soviet Union. It was a little dicey for a while. But it worked out okay. And if they had said, stay here or never walk in the building again, I would have done it. I would have walked away from tenure. I would have just done it. But they made it easy on me. They said, you can have your cake and eat it too. And I basically become a day a week consultant for Imagineering. And I did that for about 10 years. And that's one of the reasons you should all become professors. Because you can have your cake and eat it too. Okay? I went on and consulted on things like Disney Quest, so there was the Virtual Jungle Cruise, and the best interactive experience I think ever done, and Jesse Schell gets the credit for this.
Okay, so I think that's it for now. Let's stop here. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. This is Randy Posh, last lecture from Carnegie Mellon University. So he's a practical example. Okay, here's a practical. I'm just trying to read out your comments. The presentation I talked about. The presentation I talked about that you guys are supposed to do is an individual, so you guys don't have to have a group. It's individual presentation. One student has one presentation, so that's why I don't expect you guys to do a group presentation. So that's a 5-minute single person presentation, okay? And each and every one of you has who does that gets the point. Those who don't, they'll lose the point. So that's for one. The next point is this movie that I showed you was Randy Parsh's last lecture. It was about the same topic we talked about, being a hostage, like getting traumatizing and like a bad conflict, how you face it. You saw how he was basically. I will also send you the link to the video. Copy. But this is also, the deadline will be next session. You will be discussing the presentation next session. I mean, it's just one slide, or how many slides you want to show. It's 5 minutes. The deadline is next session. In the class, you guys will be presenting. And then I will give you the project, the final project, which you would have, including that next week. You have 3 weeks for emailing it to me. So that's for the deadline for this individual presentation, and your final projects you will just email it to me. So we will discuss that after you guys do the presentation next week. And then that's it. Okay. Are there any questions? I will send you the like slides for today, and also in my email I explain how I would expect you to do the presentation, so that way you have some guidelines. The final project will also be individual. No, there's no group project, and I will just give individual. My experience with group projects has not been very promising, because a lot of times students, there's one party who doesn't participate and all that. So it's just better to have a like individual project, final project. So individual final project, individual presentation next week. So all individual, because you guys live in different areas and it's difficult for you to communicate sometimes. So it's all going to be based on the individual. It can be, but I want you to have your own presentation. I don't want you to just repeat what we talked about. I would rather I actually want you to give me your version. This is a time for you to talk and tell the class what you think. You can talk about your experience. You can talk about a project that you were successful in. You can do whatever you want. 5 minutes you have to talk about whatever business strategy topic that you want to the class and everyone. Yes, please send it prior. I'll mention that in my email when I send it to you today. Okay, so that's it for the class today. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week.